Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for another fun project. My name is Miss Amy, and today we are going to do an up-close flower or an up-close sunflower. I like sunflowers, so I like to choose sunflowers for my a lot of art projects. But if you have a different flower that you like, you could definitely do a different type of flower. This one is inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe, a famous artist who lived in the 1900s. She was actually, I believe she died in 1986. And so not too long ago. But she was an artist who created well over 1,000 pieces of art in her lifetime. One of the types of art she was well known for was drawing or painting up close paintings of flowers. So she would look at a flower really up close and just paint what she saw, the lines and the shapes and the color of that up close flower. And so we're going to do a project similar to that today, but an up close of a sunflower. So the whole sunflower will not fit on our paper, and that is okay. That's how we're going to do that. Here's an example. There's also should be a picture in the front of the video too, but this is one I have here. We're going to do it a little bit different today, but this is one example. So I'm just going to go ahead and set that aside, and let's go over our supplies that we need for today's project so that you'll be ready to do this along with me. A piece of watercolor paper. I recommend that because we are going to be using watercolor paint on here, so it will work better on watercolor paper than on regular paper. You will need a pencil to draw your flower. Some watercolor paints, just a tray of watercolor paints will work wonderful. A cup of water. Paintbrush, I'm using a round paintbrush. See that the top here is round all the way around the bristles. That's a round paintbrush, and it's a medium size. It's a size 6. I really like this one for the watercolor because you can do a lot with that size of a brush. If it's too small, it's going to take a lot longer to fill in your paper, or too big, you won't be able to do some of the details, but this is a great size of brush. And then some paper towels, and then some oil pastels. We're going to add some details and texture at the very end. So let's go ahead and get started with this fun project inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe. All right, so we're going to have our paper in landscape direction just because it's easier. If you want to do yours this way, you can go right ahead and draw it that way, but I'm going to go ahead and draw it landscape direction. So sunflowers have large centers. So I'm going to draw a big center, but I don't want the whole center to be on my paper. I want it to be like you only see part of the center and some petals, because remember, we're looking at this pretty up close. So I'm going to go ahead and just start on this side, and I'm going to draw a big a circle. And to make it sure it's a circle, I'm just going to kind of come off my paper. And then, yeah, that's a pretty good circle. So that's actually pretty big. So that's all the part of the center that you're going to see, but that is okay. Now their petals are a little bit smaller. They're not huge petals, and they're more kind of rounded at the ends. And so I'm going to start, and I'm going to create petals all the way around, but I'm going to start with my center one. So I'm just going to draw a curved line out. And I'm not going to see the end of that petal because it's going off of my paper. Because remember, I'm up close. So I'm only going to see part of my petal. In the same way on that side. So I'm actually, if you went off my paper, you could draw the rest of the petal. So you only see part of the petal there. And then I'm going to draw one next to that, going up here, curve my line and go right off my paper. And then come back onto my paper and draw the rest of my petal. And then do the same on this one, off my paper. And then I don't need to come back on because I ran out of room on my paper. So on this side, I'm going to follow that petal and go off my paper, come back around on my paper. So you're kind of drawing it, pretending to draw it on your table, just so you can get the feel for the shape and size of that petal. Here's another one I'm going to draw, and that one's just going to stay off my paper just like that. So this is really cool. This is nice and up close, and we just see a little bit of our sunflower. So very cool. All right, so we're gonna set our pencil aside now that we have our flower on our paper. We're gonna get our paints out, and I'm gonna start with the center, and I'm gonna paint that first because I wanna go back and do some other things to that center. So I want it to dry by the time I'm done. So I'm gonna start by getting my brush wet and putting some water in my brown paint and just swirling it around gently in my paint. And then I'm just gonna paint. I'm gonna turn my paper around so I can reach it better. And I'm just gonna wipe that brown paint gently on my paper. I'm holding my paintbrush right where the handle and the ferrule come to close, are connected. That little metal part of your brush and the handle are connected. That's where I'm going to hold my brush so that I have control over it. So I'm just going to go ahead, and this is just, we're just painting normally. We're just getting our brush wet, getting some paint on our brush, and then applying the paint to that center part. If the paint isn't going on well and you're getting a lot of like paper showing through just like this, that means your brush needs a little more water there. You can actually just add some more water if you need to, or get some more paint if you need to too. All right, almost done filling in that brown. Okay, so now I'm going to paint in my petals and let that dry a little bit before I do the next step on there. So I'm going to rinse my brush really well, make sure that I don't have any brown left on it, and get it wet again. And this time I'm going to use, I believe I'm going to do yellow petals on my flowers. So, ooh, I'm getting low on yellow. Here, let me get this cleaned out for a bit and wipe out my little bit of green in there, and I don't want green petals on my flower. Okay, so I'm going to swirl my brush in the yellow and do the same thing. Just paint those petals, whatever color you've chosen. I'm going to paint them on. Now I'm not going to paint behind my petals, that little space in between. I'm going to do that a little bit darker, probably an orange, to create the shadow of the petals that are behind the yellow ones. So usually they have a couple sets of petals, small petals, so we're going to paint these back, like these are smaller petals behind that. You just see part of them. I'm having trouble getting yellow because I'm almost out. Anyway. Oops. There we go. Hopefully you have more yellow than I have in your paint tray. Okay, I'm almost done with these big petals. All right. One more down here on the bottom. All right. So now for that space in between my petals, I'm going to go ahead and pick up some orange. So get a clean brush and then swirl it in my orange. I have lots of orange paint, so that's good. And then I'm just going to paint the middle, that section in orange. And that kind of represents the petals that are in between or behind. You can't see them all, you only see parts of them. And don't worry if you have a little, you paint over a little bit, we're going to go back with oil pastels when it dries. So no worries on that. All right. So now our center of our flower should be dry. So what we're going to do is rinse your brush so there's no more orange on it, and you can check it on the paper towel. And then we're going to go ahead and get some black on our brush. So I'm going to swirl it in black. And then I'm just going to do a stippling, which means I'm just going to tap my paintbrush all over the brown. So I'm just going to tap the tip of my brush so it looks like little sunflower seeds. And you're going to just tap them all over the brown area. And they can overlap a little bit, but it gives a great texture and looks like little sunflower seeds all over that. There we go. That looks really cool. All right. I might put a little heavier stippling right here in the center, kind of where the center of my center is. Just to kind of show that. A little bit darker there because I think they kind of dip in a little bit in the center, if I'm correct, for sunflower. So I just want to give that a little bit more darker. And then maybe along the edge just a little bit more smaller. Yeah, there we go. I'm just using the very tip of my brush and making some smaller brush marks along the edge of my center. You can even do that in here if you want to. You can spend as much time on this as you want, as long as you can still see a little bit of the brown showing through. We're not trying to cover up all the brown. You still want to see some of that. I just think that looks cool. I'm going to add some texture. It looks like the center of full of sunflower seeds. All right, now we're going to work on the petals. The petals should be dry by the time we're done with this. And we can finish up our petals. All right, very cool. All right, so we want to rinse our brush really well. So I usually scrape it along the bottom a little bit and make sure I get all that paint off. Check it on my paper towel, make sure there's no paint coming off. And now I'm going to take just a little bit of my yellow here, get some yellow on my brush. I'm going to put it inside my tray here. So I want to just darken up my yellow a little bit. Just a little. And a good way to darken up a color, I don't want to add black to it because that's just going to give you a funky color. But if you would take just a tiny bit of the complementary color, so let me get some more yellow. Remember, I'm running out, so it's going to take me just a little bit longer. Put it in my tray. I want lots of yellow there in my tray. That's why I like these little covers that are attached, because they make great mixing trays. All right, so I'm going to just have a bunch of yellow in there and rinse my brush really well. Make sure it's yellows out of it. Okay. Get a little bit of water. I'm going to dip it in the purple. Purple is a complementary color to yellow. So I'm just going to get a tiny bit, just a little bit, and I'll mix it in with that yellow. And it's going to darken up my yellow nicely without making it a really weird color. It'll make it just a darker yellow. Nice. Okay. So I might just want a tad more. I'm just going to add a little bit of texture, a little bit of shadowing to my petals, give it a little more depth, kind of like we did the center and giving that some great texture. We're going to do that same with our petals. So usually in the center and along the edges, I'm just going to go ahead and draw some lines in my petals just to give it some little bit of, like the petals have some texture, and then maybe a little shadow along this side here. Just the petal above it is giving it a little bit of shadow there. And if you're not as comfortable, if you're younger, you don't have to do this as much, but if you're a little older and want to play around with this, feel free to do that. So this one's going to have some shadow. Make that line go all the way up the center there. There we go. Do that. Do that again on this one. And I'm running out of that nice color I mixed because I'm almost out of yellow. There we go. Okay. I'm adding just a little plain water to over here to smooth the edge of that shadow that I created, because I want it to be smooth, because I imagine petals being kind of smooth. Don't want it to be so jaggedy there. Okay. All right, just a little bit, because we're going to add some stuff with our oil pastels later. And so now we're going to just let that dry for a minute here. And you can do that by cleaning up your paints a little bit, setting them aside. You can wave it in the air to help it dry or blow on it. This is where we're going to get, mine's almost dry here. I'm going to blot a little bit of water down here because that's going to take really long to dry. And then I'm going to blot a little bit of this black up because that's going to take really long to dry too. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to take some of my oil pastels. You want to make sure that your painting is dry before you do this, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and get my black oil pastel, and I'm going to go ahead and add some more stippling in the center, just a little bit with my oil pastel. So I'm just going to do the same technique, except with my oil pastel. So I'm going to just draw a little black dots all over that center, and just gives it another layer of texture. And I don't know if you can see that very well in the video. It looks cool from here in person, so you'll probably see that on yours. So I'm going to cover the whole center with this. Alright, almost done with this. And you can spend as much time as you need on this. You might want to take your time and really do a nice job. There, look at how much more texture that created. That looks so cool. All right, so you could probably even do that a little bit with brown. You could probably take your brown even and add some of those stippling with your brown, and that will just give you a whole another layer of texture in that center. Oh yeah, that looks so cool. Creating that. Now I'm not going to do it in the very center because I wanted that area to be a little bit darker, and so I'm only going to use the brown in the other areas. And probably not as much as I did the black, but that looks so cool. All right, lots of cool texture on that. And then I'm going to take my take some yellow, or I might use my yellow, or I might use yeah, I think I'll use my yellow here. Peel it off a little bit. And I am just going to add trace my petals a little bit with yellow, just giving them a little more color here. Just brightening them up a bit. All right, and then I'm going to draw, add some lines in the center too. Just a little more texture on my flowers with yellow. You can do this as much as you want. If you want to use a lighter orange or a darker yellow, you could do that. You just want to add just a little bit of texture there. That just makes them pop a little bit more. And there you have it. I really like how mine looks, so I'm going to stop there. But you can add as much, you can add a little more oil pastel if you wanted, but I think it turned out wonderful. And so thank you for joining me today for this fun watercolor up close sunflower project. I hope you have a wonderful day. And also if you want to snap a picture and send it to me, I love to see your finished sunflower, up close sunflower. or up close flower. Well, thank you again for joining me. Bye-bye.